You.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Whitley, and I'm here with Renee Wilson, and we're back with the legendary Mr. Sala Udin. This is part 2 of our interview with him, and we are going to just pick up talking about the tuberculosis hospital that was on Bedford Avenue.
The TB hospital, we called it. And it was a kind of a scary place. Our parents told us to stay away from the TB hospital because you could get sick. Because the only people who went there were people with contagious disease of TB. Tuberculosis at that time was not very well known as a disease. They didn't know how to treat it. So for the most part, they just isolated people away from the public until you either recovered or died. So the TB hospital was a lot of people got sick from tuberculosis. If you check the health indexes for that period of time, during the 1940s, 1950s, the TB hospital was an important institution, but a frightening institution because it symbolized sickness and death. It was a scary place.
How did it become to be the site pick to make the senior housing after it was the hospital?
Well, it was closed for a long time. And it still carried with it that stigma of sickness and death. And so there was not a lot of excitement for a long time to do anything with it, especially not something that would invite people to move in and live there. Nobody was very excited about that. It took a while, and what they mainly had to get rid of was not the rooms and the furnishings, it was the stigma of TB until there were medicines and treatments available to understand that it was a bacteria infection that could be treated. And once people understood that, because a lot of people thought that you get TB from being poor, you get TB from being black, you get TB from being bad. So it took a while to get rid of the TB stigma, and it took a while to get federal and state resources interested in developing facilities for people in the Hill District. And eventually, the TB hospital was one of the first institutions, aside from the projects, Bedford dwellings, that was made habitable for people to live in.
Okay. So we want to talk about Eddie's restaurant.
Okay.
Tell us about Eddie's and what Eddie's mean to you.
Eddie's, so we're moving up along in time. So by now we're probably in the late 50s or early 60s. Eddie's was a place that we frequented and really enjoyed. Eddie Owens was the owner, and many of his nieces, nephews worked in the restaurant. The food was very good and very affordable. Eddie kept the place clean and well run. And I remember going into Eddie's, my favorite food in Eddie's, he has some short ribs to die for. Short ribs and noodles.
Noodles?
And cornbread.
Oh.
Oh.
And that was something like $1.20.
You can't beat
Right. Not at all.
And if it wasn't that, he had great wings, chicken wings. His food was just plain good.
it was just good.
Eddie cooked it himself. Eddie was the chef. He wasn't just the owner. He cooked it, and he supervised the preparation of the food by the people who was working for him. So he mainly was in and out of the kitchen and the cash register, making sure that both of them
Was all right.
was all right. It was a place where they didn't hurry you out. You could enjoy your food, sit there, talk with your friends, and as long as you didn't have no excuses when it came time to pay.
You better have your $1.50.
Right.
You better have it. So Eddie's was a place where a lot of people you would see coming through if you sat there long enough. It was a local place where local Hill District residents came and enjoyed the food.
So, did the poets hang out there?
Absolutely. Mainly because the food was cheap and the poets didn't have no money.
No, they didn't.
So Eddie's became a place where we hung out. But Eddie's was not the first restaurant that we hung out. The story of the formation of the Black Horizons Theater at Aleo Wild School tails off into a restaurant that was further down Wiley Avenue. Eddie's was at Wiley and Kirkpatrick. If you go a few blocks further down Wiley into the 1700 block, there was a restaurant that we first used as a gathering place. And the restaurant was owned by a guy named Cliff and his brother. And Cliff owned the restaurant, but he didn't like people.
Didn't like people.
He didn't like people. He didn't have a lot of patience with people. He was a gruff, angry guy. And he didn't even have a name for the restaurant.
Oh.
He just made a sign out of a piece of cardboard and put pan-fried fish. And put that sign in the window, pan-fried fish.
Wow.
Well, probably some good fish.
It was, dog. Black bass, fried in cornmeal. It was good. And so that was the first place where we hung out. Pan-fried fish. That's where the background for Jitney came when August left Pittsburgh. Whenever he came back, which it was frequent, he came back for kind of a cultural regeneration. And we always enjoyed getting together when August was back in town, and we'd talk about what projects he was working on. And eventually he said that he was pretty close to mounting his first professional play. And it was a play. Now see, whenever we decided to meet at Pan Fried Fish, it was next door to a jitney station. And whenever we would plan to meet, we'd say we plan at 2 o'clock. August would have been there at 1 o'clock. And he'd be next door at the jitney station, sitting on the floor, taking notes, laughing with the guys who were always telling stories and lies about their time in the war, or about their time with women, or the fights that they had. And they always had stories going, and August used to love listening to those stories. But he was in the back of the jitney station, usually sitting on the floor, laughing, taking notes, and saying nothing. He never said anything. August was shy. And so he never said anything. But eventually he told us and me, I'm ready to mount my first play. And it takes place in a jitney station. So we said, of course. Of course it takes place in a jitney station. And he said to me, I wrote this play with you in mind as the jitney station owner who's getting into it with his son, who has disappointed him after all that the owner, whose name was Becker, for all that Becker put into his son messed around with this white girl, got himself in trouble. She lied on him, and he got arrested, and he went up to the house while he was out on bail and shot her to death. And ruined his life. Booster was his name. And he said, I want you to play Becker. I said, August, I can't. I'm getting ready to move to California. He said, I wrote this play with you in mind as the central figure, the jitney station owner, Becker. You got to do this. I said, August, I can't. I'm moving to California. He said, read the script and let's meet here again tomorrow. We were in Pan Fried Fish. I said, all right, but I'm telling you, I'm moving. I took the script home, read it, cried, thought about it. I called the guy that I was leaving Pittsburgh with. and said, we can't leave this week.
Oh,
I got to do this play. And so that was the first play we did, Jitney. We did it at a church that was renovated out on the corner of Craft and Fifth Avenue. And August's mother was still alive. She came to that play, Daisy. And it was a hit among all the jitney drivers in the Hill District too. And they came to see the play, and they loved it. And it was a full house, sold out, and we had to extend it for 2 weeks beyond the period that we had said. And then I said, August, I can't extend it no more. I'm gone this weekend. I'm leaving for California. And that was when I left. But that was my introduction to Jitney.
that was it.
It's still my favorite play.
Okay. Did you come back before the arena was built?
No. By the time the arena hadn't been built by the time I left and returned, but it was built sometime shortly after that.
So when you returned to Pittsburgh, it was already standing.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about Freedom Corner. I know Freedom Corner means a lot to you.
The story of Freedom Corner starts with Jake Mallions. Jake Mallions was one of us in the Black Power movement. But he was one of the smart ones. He was enrolled in the University of Pittsburgh, and he was majoring in psychology because he had a passion for severely disturbed black children. That was what he was going to spend his professional life doing. And when Jake became the city councilman, after he left the school board, he worked with the mayor, who at that time was a woman named Sophie Maslow. And they worked to build new housing development in the Hill District. It was the first new housing development that was built since the demolition and the building of the projects. So what was different about this housing development is that it involved ownership. In the Lower Hill District, we didn't own nothing. We were residents there. We were paying rent, but we didn't own anything, which was the reason why they were able to run us out of there so easily. So Jake and Sophie worked to get the federal money to build new home ownership in the Hill District, the first black home ownership project in the Hill District. And they called it Crawford Square. But before they got a chance to build a single wall, Jake died of a heart attack. left 4 kids, the baby of which was a baby named Marimba. The oldest was a talented musician, piano player, who was named after W.E.B. Du Bois. And his name was Du Bois. Du Bois never got over Jake's death. But the one thing that Jake made clear in the planning of Crawford Square, in addition to making sure that black people were going to be involved in the construction and the jobs, he said, we're going to reserve this square, which is across the street from the church. By that time, it had changed the name from Holy Trinity to St. Benedict. And St. Benedict had served as the location for gatherings, civil rights related gatherings that were meeting there to march downtown. We'd meet on the steps of St. Benedict's Church and get ready to march. Across the street, Jake designated that spot for a monument, a memorial to the civil rights movement in Pittsburgh and the heroes and leaders that came before it. But he never got a chance to turn a single shovel of dirt when he died. So when I got elected to city council following Jake, it became clear to me that the most important thing that I could do was, one, make sure that the building of Crawford Square continued and that we complete the project that Jake envisioned as a monument to the Black freedom struggle in Pittsburgh and Freedom Corner. So we started a competition, an artist's competition, to give ideas about how can we, what could this monument look like? And we got a number of entries and suggestions, and we settled on one artistic concept that was submitted by Carlos Peterson, and an architect, and it was a circular monument within a square. And the backdrop had a figure of a Black woman, and it was absolutely beautiful. And that's the design that we adopted, and that's the design that still exists at Freedom Corner. But it started with Jake Lyons, and it still exists to this day.
When you look at Freedom Corner now and see that so many people continue to use it for its, I guess you could say, intended purposes, like a lot of activism, a lot of protests. I remember the first protest I was a part of when Trayvon Martin was killed, and we all gathered at Freedom Corner out in front of St. Benedict, and there was a protest there. Like, how do you feel when you look at it now and see that people are still using Freedom Corner to be a part of the fight for our civil rights and equality?
I'm honored, number one, that I was able to bring Jake's vision into reality, and that it is still being used for that purpose. But it's also being used for other purposes. I've seen people have weddings.
Right, yes, prom pictures too.
Prom pictures at Freedom Corner. So it's okay. I'm proud to have been associated with it, and I thank Jake for his vision whenever I take a look at it. There's a project going on right now to renovate Freedom Corner. Last winter, there was an automobile accident that ran into the front facade of Freedom Corner and destroyed the front and the computer kiosk that was behind it. And so now we, with the help of the current city councilman, Daniel Lavelle, we are repairing that damage that was done, and also using that opportunity to upgrade Freedom Corner. It has always needed a couple benches, because whenever there's a large gathering at Freedom Corner, some of the older folks need somewhere to sit, because them speakers can get long-winded. And so we're going to put some seating there. We're going to fix the front. We're going to repair the kiosk. The person who operated the internal memory of the kiosk was Jake's youngest daughter, Marimba Malayans. And so she's still involved in the repair of the computer kiosk, and which tells the story of why Freedom Corner exists, who it represents, but also worried whenever I see Freedom Corner, because the people have successfully, that's what we intended. We wanted people to take ownership of Freedom Corner. So now people do own Freedom Corner. And so whenever there's going to be a rally or protest, Freedom Corner is the automatic gathering place. But it scares me because Freedom Corner has no insurance. And if somebody falls down those steps, Freedom Corner can't help pay for that damage. And so we've got to fix that. And people are not going to like it, but right now you don't have to get a permit to use Freedom Corner. But we're going to have to require permits, so that we can have a fund to keep the repairs up and have a way of ensuring that if somebody gets injured, there is a way to handle that. So that's what we're doing now with this current upgrade of Freedom Corner. Now, Freedom Corner, according to the design of the artist, has concentric circles. There's an outer circle that has, it's all granite, and has the names carved in of the civil rights leaders who were existing and in place at that time in 2002, their names are engraved in the outer circle. My name is in the outer circle. But most of the people in the outer circle have deceased since then. So we are going to, as a part of this upgrade, have an asterisk placed next to their name to indicate that they have deceased since their name was inserted. So I check that my name occasionally, make sure there's no asterisk next to my name. So there's no asterisk yet?
No, there's no, not with your name.
No. But at least 50% of their names who were there at the start of Freedom Corner have passed away. And on the inner circle, there's another list of 24 names names of civil rights leaders who were deceased at the time that we dedicated Freedom Corner. So their names are on that prayer circle in the inner ring. And on the inside of that prayer circle is a granite globe that was imported from Ghana. So you'll see a shiny black granite piece in the dead center of Freedom Corner. And under that piece of granite, beneath it, buried in the ground, is a time capsule. We have not taken that time capsule out. It's still there. So we decided that we're going to wait until the 25th anniversary, which will be 2025, when we will have a dedication of the silver anniversary of Freedom Corner, the 25th anniversary, and then we will open up that granite piece, take out the time capsule, and see what we put in there 25 years ago.
I can't wait. What you put in there?
I can't tell you, but I'd have to kill you. I don't remember what we put in there. But it's a time capsule. That's what's in the center of Freedom Corner.
Amazing.
And we're repairing it and getting it back in shape.
What did you think about the Hill House?
Hill House was an important institution. Hill House saved my life. The original institution that was there was the Anneby Helderman Center. It was a social services center. And the Irene Kaufman Center was the original buildings. They eventually tore down the original buildings and replaced it with Hill House in the late 60s. And they continue to provide social services out of the Hill House. But it started by Jewish philanthropists who, as they were leaving the Hill, wanted to make a contribution to leave behind to contain their memories. And the the Annabelle Heldman Center and the Hill House are the institutions that they built to honor some of the Jewish residents of the Hill District